Hello again, and welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com. And once again, today we're looking at a sample independent essay. Up at the top of the screen is the question we're dealing with. It goes like this. Some students prefer classes with frequent discussions between the professor and the students with almost no lectures. Other students prefer classes with many lectures and almost no discussions. Which do you prefer? Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. So as you can see, this is the preference style question. It gives you a choice of two things or three things, and it asks you which of those you prefer. This is one of the three main independent essay question types. I think this is probably the second most common type these days. The longest type, the most common type is the agree-disagree type, which we dealt with in a video a couple days ago. All right, so we begin this essay by writing an introduction. The introduction is 3 sentences long. The first sentence is what I call the hook. This is also sometimes referred to as a background sentence. The e-writer is specifically looking for some kind of hook, some kind of background at the very beginning of your introduction. In that line, you should introduce the general topic of the essay. In this case, the general topic is, your preferences for learning. So I just wrote, every student has their own preferred learning style, and therefore it is impossible to accommodate all of them. Don't use this line to repeat the opposite of your thesis. Don't use this line to repeat the question. Simply use this line to introduce the general theme of the essay. After the hook, you should write your thesis statement. It should begin with something like, in my opinion, or I believe, and then you simply state your thesis, your opinion. Don't make it too fancy. I want this line to be direct, and I want it to be concise. I want the person scoring your essay to immediately know what your main thesis is. And then you end the introduction with a transitional sentence, kind of like the one I've included in this sample essay. Now you can see that parts of this essay I have highlighted in red. These are the template parts. These parts you can use word for word in your own essays. You don't have to change them. You can use these exactly as I've created them. Don't worry, you won't get punished for using templates that you find on the internet. Okay, after our introduction, we get to the first body paragraph. And as you can see, I've also highlighted the template stuff in red. You start your first body paragraph with a topic sentence. I like to use something like "to begin with." You could also use "first of all" or "firstly." The topic sentence is a summary of the argument you're making in the entire body paragraph. So once again, in this case, make it clear, make it concise. Don't get too fancy in the topic sentence. If you want to get fancy, that's okay, but do it later in the body paragraph. I want the topic sentence to be really clear and really concise. Moreover, I don't want you writing about yourself in the topic sentence. Write about yourself in the personal example, which we'll get to in a moment. In the topic sentence, write broadly, write about everyone, write about the world in general. After the topic sentence are the explanatory sentences. These are a few sentences, 1, 2, or 3, that kind of go into more detail about what you just stated in the topic sentence. This elaborates on what you've said. It explains more precisely what you mean. And after that, of course, you're going to support this argument with a personal example from your life. Begin it with a clear transitional phrase like "for example" or "for instance." And then just tell a little story from your life. Something that happened to you, which which illustrates the argument you made in the topic sentence. The last sentence of your body paragraph, if you wish, can restate the topic sentence. You can repeat that argument you've made. And you can begin that with something like, this example demonstrates. Note that this kind of summing up sentence, as I refer to it, is purely optional. You don't need it. It's not required. It looks good. It's a nice way to increase your word count. But if you're running out of time or if you're a slow writer, feel free to leave it out. It is probably the least important part of the body paragraph. Note that in this essay, I've highlighted in green discourse phrases. Things like on the other hand or as a result. Those phrases are really important. They'll increase your score. I expect to see them in your essays. So I've highlighted them in the sample just for emphasis. Any other techniques here? Well, I always like conjunctions. I've mentioned that in all my videos, so I won't repeat myself. In this case, I used an idiom, the cut and thrust of debate. I'm kind of ambivalent about idioms. I recognize that, yeah, they probably will help your score, but just keep in mind that they're pretty hard to use. So don't go overboard, at the most, just use one in a given essay. And if you're not comfortable with idioms, you can just not use them at all. That's totally okay. All right, next up is the second body paragraph. This one's a little bit longer than my first one, I think. That's okay. The length of the body paragraphs should be fairly similar, but it's okay if one's longer than the other by a little bit. So I start this one with secondly, and then I write my topic sentence. In this case, I wrote, secondly, classes that involve a lot of interactions can help students develop the skills necessary to work well in groups. And you notice I'm writing about students in general. I'm not writing about me. I'm not writing about myself in a topic sentence. I didn't write, secondly, classes that involve a lot of interactions can help me develop the skills necessary to work well in groups. Now, this is my preference, and some teachers will disagree, but I think it's a better form to write broadly in this sentence. Don't write about yourself. I think my method also lends itself to easier grammar, and I think it'll help you avoid making mistakes in this important sentence. Another thing I don't want you to do here is to write about you, as in the reader. Don't write classes that involve a lot of interactions can help you develop the skills necessary to work well in groups. That's just absolutely terrible. Grammatically, it's fine, and it probably won't hurt your score, but it looks really bad in academic writing, and it's something that your professors are going to hate if you do it on your actual essays at school. So yeah, don't do it. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole body paragraph, but I continued that by writing 2 explanatory sentences. Write 2. One's okay, but you got to write something explanatory. Don't just jump right into the personal example after your topic sentence. That's bad, and I'm pretty sure you'll get penalized for doing that. Okay, and so after that, I wrote my transition into the personal example. I wrote, in this case, my older brother's experience demonstrates that this is true. And you can see the parts in red you can use in every essay you write. You can write, my personal experience demonstrates that this is true. My father's experience, my mother's experience. You can use the red stuff in all your essays. And then after that, I wrote a personal example about his life. Generally, I do recommend writing about your own life, but it's just as easy to write about your best friend or your brother. And if that's a little easier, go ahead and do it. It's, basically just as good as writing about yourself. As you can see, I used however and I used as a result. Those are my discourse phrases for this paragraph. If you pause it, you'll see that I wrote some simple sentences and some compound sentences in my essay body. That's very, very important as well. You don't want to write just simple sentence after simple sentence after simple sentence. Now, if you don't know what a simple versus a compound versus a complex sentence actually means, I do suggest you start studying your grammar, because that is very, very important stuff. After that, I wrote my conclusion, and I begin that conclusion with "in conclusion." You could use "to sum up," something that makes it very clear you're beginning the conclusion. The conclusion has 2 sentences. First of all, I repeat my thesis by not using the same words. I'm paraphrasing it. And then I repeat the 2 main arguments. I begin with "this is because," and I separate them with the word "and." Once again, I remind you, don't just copy and paste the topic sentences when you write this conclusion. You need to paraphrase them as much as possible. And that's all you need in a conclusion. Sometimes you might think, I should add one extra thought at the very end. I don't recommend it. You're not going to get penalized by including that extra thought, but I don't think it's a good use of your time. That time is better spent either on proofreading the work or simply on improving the body paragraphs. This essay came out to 411 words. I think that's just about ideal. I generally recommend between 380 and 400. It's okay to write a little bit more than 400, which is what I did here. Don't try to write more than that, seriously. It's probably a bad idea. For most of you, if you just try to write a really, really, really long essay, you're going to make more mistakes and your score is going to drop because of that. Some teachers will recommend writing more. I just simply don't think that's a good idea. Take my advice. 400 at the most, a little bit more like I did if necessary, but don't strain yourself. Okay, that is a very quick look at a TOEFL independent essay. If you want to know more about this kind of stuff, just visit my website at TOEFLresources.com. You can find complete guides to this task, and you can sign up to have your own essays evaluated and graded by me. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, but I'll see you guys next week for a new video. Bye-bye for now.